is Krull, a world light years beyond your imagination.
Hello and welcome to Lost in Sci-Fi and Fantasy. I'm your host Leo, and today we're talking about the 1983 film Krull. I had not really heard of this film before, finding it on HBO Max. That's where I watched it. I had heard like some references and whatnot, and I'd seen the glaive in other things, but before actually going into it, I had never really actually properly heard of it. Though doing a little bit of research, I did learn that it had become a cult classic. The film revolves around the titular planet Krull, in which this invading presence lands on this planet that is, like, I'm going to say 99% fantasy. Like, the planet itself, it's like medieval fantasy-esque world that for some reason has intergalactic knowledge for some reason. I don't know. But the story stars Colwyn, played by Ken Marshall. He is a prince, like this brave warrior-esque prince who is to be married to Princess Lisa. Let's say Lissa. And she is kidnapped by the being that landed called the Beast. He's just called the Beast. And so he must set out, as now he has become king, because his father got unalived. He got stabbed pretty bad. So she gets kidnapped, and he must set out on a journey after he has a bit of a pout. When this like wizard guy comes up to him, who supposedly saw the attack, came down from the mountains, because he was for some reason in like a sort of self-imposed self-exile, which is, I don't know. But he comes down from the mountains and says, "Yeah, I saw everything. So you're king now. We need to go get the glaive so that you can kill the beast and get your bride to be back." At first, he's a bit whiny about it, as recently made kings tend to sometimes be. So he joins him, and they set off on this grand adventure to claim the glaive. That lasts about like 10 minutes because they get it immediately. Something that would have been the crux of a movie, it became kind of irrelevant very fast, actually. So he takes him to a mountain, has him set off on the journey alone. He goes and he gets the glaive with like not a whole lot of problems. Like he's the guy's super mysterious, and he's like, the guy's like, Colwyn is like, I'll be back in a bit. And he's like, yeah, like if you survive, you'll be back. If you're not back by, I'll know you didn't make it. But like 10 minutes later, he's back. It's like no problem, and he gets ready to like throw it, and the guy's like, no, don't do that right now. Save it. It'll be beautiful. Just save it. So he's like, okay, sure, I get what you mean. Then they come across another thing. Like most of the movies, like building up his party, although that's also pretty fast because he comes across like this Robin Hood-esque band of thieves, who has amongst their party, as many people like to point out, Liam Neeson. It's one of his pre-Star Wars roles. It's really jarring because he like looks very Qui-Gon Jinn in this movie. So just seeing him like that, it's just like, okay, neat, I guess. But anywho, also amongst the party, because everyone talks about Liam Neeson, but someone else who's in the movie that is not quite as known and not quite as recognizable is Robbie Coltrane, who is better known as Hagrid in the Harry Potter films. And it's very sad because he very recently passed away, and I don't know, the timing is just awful, to be honest. It's one of those situations where, like, you watch or do something with that involves someone, and then all of a sudden they're just gone. It kind of sucks, you know? It's a shame. He was 72. And supposedly, the past few years, he has had health issues, like the past couple of years. And I don't know, I haven't seen exactly what happened, but supposedly, whatever was ailing him finally took its toll in the end. And it's a shame. He's a fantastic actor. I really enjoyed his performance in the show Still Game, where he plays a manic bus driver, like a kind of could snap at any moment bus driver, and he was fantastic in that. He's really good in Krull as well. He's kind of more of a background character most of the time, which, to be fair, this is one of his early roles. But yeah, he will be missed for sure. Anywho, moving on from that, continuing the story. So after they meet up with this band of people, because Colwyn decides that he needs an army, and he's like, you guys want to be an army? I'll give you pardons, because they're all like freed prisoners, or sort of, they're escaped prisoners, and he is willing to set them free, and he proves his identity by holding a key that only 2 people have, and he doesn't look like that one guy, so he's probably the king, so he can actually set us free. So they decide to go along with him, and so their big goal is to just figure out where this castle that the beast stays in is, because the castle moves its location every morning. So as the sun comes up, it disappears from its current location and reappears elsewhere, which I think is a neat concept, though there's a lot of questions that are brought up because of it, but we'll get to my questions and problems with the film down the line. So, their first choice of figuring out where it is to go to a man called Seer. He's this old wizard-looking guy. I actually really love his character design because he's like very classic old wizard guy. But they go to him so that he can use his crystal to figure out where the castle is. But as he's using the crystal, the beast somehow destroys it, and so they have to go somewhere else. They have to go to this, it's like a temple or a tomb. It doesn't matter because they never get there. So they have to go through this swamp, and while a bunch of people get stuck in this like swampy, marshy area, because the beast supposedly like turned it to goo, and so they started sinking. The old man sitting on a log and gets got by a changeling, or a doppelganger, shapeshifter. There we go. He gets got by a shapeshifter that turns into him and takes his place, and then he tries to attack the king, who kills him, and then they have to then change their plan. So they kind of wander aimlessly for a bit, until the old man that, helped kick off the adventure comes back, or comes up to him and says, we'll have to consult the widow of the web, who's this spider lady thing or situation. It's weird. So he says, I have to do this myself. I can get her to tell us, because I know her actual name. So it's all good. So he goes and ventures there, and there's this really cool scene where there's this like spider like coming after him, and when she talks to him, she says, well, who's trying to come here? You're gonna die if you try to come over here by this really rad crystal spider. And he says her name, and so she then turns over this hourglass, which stops the spider, and he's then able to kind of get to her, though it's a little bit close, and he talks to her, and it turns out she is his ex-lover, whom he just kind of like left for some reason, and she got pregnant by him, but as revenge against him, decided to kill their son. So that is why she has sequestered herself in this spider cave for the rest of her life, as penance for killing her son. Self-imposed, like his thing was. No real reason to do it, except for, she feels sad about what she did. So he convinces her to give him the location, because her real name so happens to be the same as the princess's name, Lissa. When I saw that, I was like, well, that's a very like Batman v Superman's Martha situation, like, because she's like, okay, so he'll be here at this time. Go. But he's like, but the spider. And she's like, right. Take this sand from the hourglass. I give my life so that the other Lissa can live. And for some reason, she gives him a handful of sand so that the spider won't attack him. But as the sand slips away, so too does his life. So he has to shimmy across these webs with a handful of sand. And then once he gets out of the cave, like, he notices that the sand's still slipping out of his hand. So he has to book it back to the crew that's just this entire time been hanging out. Although there's been like a doppelganger that was also there, that was somehow convinced by cold wind that, like, it's all good. So then the beast just kills her for some reason. But yeah, he has to book it back. But while they're just hanging about, we learned that Liam Neeson's character has 8 wives, which was a detail. And one of them was in the nearby village and just brought them food to eat in the middle of the woods. Because, sure. But anywho, the old man gets back to them, tells them when it's going to be, and that they must hurry. And then, I guess, even though he still had like some sand on his hand, he dies. Sure. So they very briefly mourn his death and then just leave. But they're like, how are we going to get there fast enough? Like, it's really far away. So they're like, let's get the flame steeds. These horses that run so fast that they spark fire behind them. And they're like, yeah, let's do that. And so there's a quick scene of them doing that. And then they go. I did forget to mention that there's a Cyclops that's just kind of been with them like most of this time. He just stands about for the first like 20 minutes, but then he actually becomes more interwoven into the plot. And his is a tragic story, but we'll get to that a bit later. Actually, technically now, because it kind of comes up now. So the Cyclops supposedly their race asked the Beast to be able to see the future, and they were willing to give up one of their eyes to do so. And the Beast granted their wish. They were able to see the future, but they now only have one eye. But, monkey's paw situation, they are only allowed to see their death. So they are a tragic creature because as they are born, they know when and how they'll die. And they cannot change it. So, there's that. So at this point, for some reason, the Cyclops, after they get the steeds, he's like, okay, this is where we part ways because it is time. And they're like, cool. And then they, ride the steeds to the place. The only thing is, he comes back not a couple minutes later. It's like, okay, why did you part ways if you're just going to be here anyway? But it turns out his death is getting crushed in a doorway. There's a lot of deaths from this point on, as people are just picked off one by one as they're assaulting the fortress. Everyone dies. All of the band of thieves / prisoners / I guess makeshift army die, including sadly Robbie Coltrane's character, Liam Neeson's character, in which he, I'm going to say very rudely, asks one of his mates, I think the guy the one thief that survives, the lead bandit, where he says, tell the wife that fed us in the woods that I love her. And it's like, okay, what about the other 7? But anywho, they work their way through the fortress, and he's able to save her. He uses the glaive finally to cut open the thing she's stuck in, gets her out, and then the Beast comes and he throws it at the Beast, and he's able to control it by a pseudo force thing. He just holds his hand out and he can move it around, but he throws it and attacks it and then brings it back and he throws it again and he sticks it into the Beast's chest, and the Beast falls and he stands there for a good minute and a half trying to pull it out using his telepathy thing that he for some reason now has. He's pulling at it and he's like, oh, it's not working. So he walks over to the Beast to just grab it, but the Beast is still alive. And so the Beast just chases them down a bit, corners them, and then of course there's the power was in you all along thing, where he shoots fire out of his hand at the Beast and kills the Beast. It's kind of silly, but it's probably part of the reason why it didn't rate so well in theaters, because it's corny as hell. There's things I'll give it props for and whatnot, but with the Beast dead, they now have to escape. They escape and get out, and the castle collapses and whatnot. And then they have a hearty laugh and walk into the distance, where eventually it freeze frames, and that's the end of the movie. So it's a pretty good film. I wouldn't rate it as my favorite thing. There's a lot of questions it brings up for me. So, for example, the opening and closing dialogue, narration, is pretty much stating that these two get married, Like, Colwyn and Lissa get married and have a kid. And that kid becomes the ruler of the galaxy. My question is how? Because when I first saw, like, the intro, the first thing that came to mind is like, it'd actually be like a really interesting concept, kind of like a Cowboys versus Aliens situation, where like this dominating space force comes down to a planet and just meets like medieval Europe kind of situation. You know, knights and horses and dragons and shit. It would be kind of like hilarious and fun. But instead it's very awkward because in this situation, they're all very aware of who the Beast is, what the Beast does, and what's happening. Instead of the kind of cool situation of like, just why, what's happening, what's going on, what? Instead, it's just, you know, it's like, okay, yeah, my question is, how do the powers know about these things? Like the seer is able to like pinpoint where the guy is and where he'll be next. The widow's able to see where he'll be next. Like, how do they know this? And then there's the Cyclopses. Like, was the Beast here before? Were the Cyclopses from a different world and for some reason came here? Like, what's going on? How is this kid going to be on this mostly like medieval fantasy world? How is he going to get into space and rule the galaxy? It's just a lot of questions, because like the Beast definitely came from outer space, because in the beginning of the movie you see his fortress coming down to the planet. It's weird. Then there's the issue with the glaive. In most movies that would have been like the end goal MacGuffin. You know, they spend like half the movie getting it and then the rest of the time going to like the castle. Instead they decided, you know, the bulk of the story is going to be the journey. You know, kind of Lord of the Rings-esque. You know, they have the MacGuffin. They just need to get it where it needs to be. So I can kind of respect that, but at the same time, it's like, you don't use it for much. Like, literally, he kills like maybe 5 people with it because they're attacking him while he's trying to cut open this like ruby chamber that Lissa's in. And then he's like, oh, I'll just use this as like a power saw. And he like throws it at the wall and then like uses the force. Because it's like a weird telepathy thing that he has control with it for. But he uses that to like cut this hole out of the side of the thing. And then they hit it and like he's able to get him out. I was expecting like a maybe... Like at first I was kind of expecting what's the word? A He-Man-esque universe. Where like it's mostly fantasy, but there's like technology mixed in. You know, so like I have a sword, but the sword might shoot a laser. That kind of thing. Or they might have laser guns or something. But no, for the most part, the world of Krull is like almost pure fantasy, except for the fact that there's an alien that landed, and for some reason everyone on this fantasy planet knows about the alien. Like, they're completely aware of who he is, what he does, and what's happening. It's very weird. The Beast's design's kind of neat. It's like a... Kind of take a gray alien, you know, your standard bubble-headed gray. Give it, like mean eyes, like maybe like take the gray and then, like, cross them with an octopus. And you'll have a decent kind of idea. Like, minus the tentacles. So he has kind of like a beaky, like, teethy maw. like look him up. It's a pretty good design, but also kind of silly. Something that is absolutely amazing is some of the set design in the Beast's Fortress castle thing. They're just really cool. Like, they're like these they would fit very well on the cover of like a heavy metal album. Like when you first see Lissa in the fortress thing, she's in like this eyeball thing, and then as she's like trying to move around and try to find an exit, there's also like this really big like claw hand room that she runs through. Like the design's ridiculous, but at the same time it looks amazing. So mad respect for that. It's beautiful. And of course the set for the spider, or the Widow of the Web, like that area is really coolly designed because it's like all these like huge webs like stuck to the walls that all connect to the center chamber that she's just chilling in. And like as he's crawling along, there's this like really big like crystal looking spider. Like it looks really cool, and I love the design of it. The Cyclops, his design looks like it could very easily, like you could take him and just like plant him in something like the Odyssey and he'd fit pretty well. Like it looks pretty good. Others kind of some minor sticking points. There's a comic relief character called Ergo, and his whole thing is that he's bad at magic. Like he does magic, but he's bad at it because he has like these spells that are on, I guess, the medieval equivalent of flashcards, and he has them like jumbled up and I guess mislabeled. So he's like, oh, and I'll turn you into a this, that, or the other, but he can only really, turn himself into those things. So he's like, I'll turn you into a goose, and he turns himself into a goose. At one point, he turns himself into a dog, and the little boy that accompanied the seer just like picks up the dog and carries him. But in the end, he's able to turn himself into a tiger. And watching it, I was like, did they have that kid in a room with a tiger? Like that tiger acted really well, I will say that. Yeah, I would definitely say it's cheesy, so definitely go into it understanding it's cheesy, but it's some pretty good dumb fun. Like you can turn off your brain and just be like, yeah, that's pretty good, pretty fun. It's not a terribly long movie. It comes in at just like over 2 hours, just over 2 hours. So not terribly long. Though you might get a little bit tired of, them being sidetracked. Because they're going one way, they're doing one thing, but now we have to turn and go that way. Nope, now we have to go that way. And sorry, now we have to go this way. All just trying to find a different way to figure out where's the thing going to appear tomorrow. So, it can get a little bit annoying there, but for the most part, it's a nice, fun adventure. I would love to see someone's interpretation of a sequel. Like, bridge the gap between this and the kid becoming ruler of the galaxy, please. I'm actually very surprised that they haven't attempted to make a sequel with all of these like old properties, being revived and whatnot. You would think that someone would have been like Krull, that's a cult classic. People, we could technically build a story off of it. I'm surprised they haven't. Of course, sadly, all the like nostalgic characters that they could like exploit, probably not. well, I mean, they couldn't use them anyway because most everyone in the movie dies. So, like, the people you could bring back are, like, Colwyn, the princess. The people you could bring back are, like, Colwyn, the princess, the wizardy guy, Ergo, the guy that's bad at magic, and, like, the kid. Like, and maybe the other guy. Maybe. Other than that, probably not. Ideally, the way you'd probably do it is you would do Legend of Korra situation. Everyone before is not a problem. You're dealing with whole new characters for the most part, but like there's maybe some links to the past. Yeah, I would definitely recommend giving it a look. At least give it 5 minutes. See if the world interests you at all. If not, give it a pass. It's fine. I wouldn't say it's required viewing. It's good old 80s like fantasy for the most part. It's a good old fare. It's just annoying that they have a MacGuffin, they don't really use it. In fact, you forget about it. And then the whole, like, the name of the movie is just the planet. Like, nothing within the movie, like, has anything to do with the title. The title's Krull, and they're on the planet Krull, but they could also be, like, in New Zealand or something for the most part. Like, or Scotland. Like, nothing's super fantastical about the world to justify the name, I guess. But it's fine. Anyway, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. If you guys liked what you just listened to, there's more episodes that you can listen to if you haven't listened to them already. I will once again be back on Monday. This should be good. We'll see. Anyway, but yeah, I'll be back Monday with another episode of this lovely podcast, and hopefully things continue to get better. I'm starting to find my stride. Things are getting smoother. For the first actual Monday separate from this, we're going to be doing some Halloween stuff, a spooky thing. Yeah. For Halloween, we'll be doing The Thing, and also The Blob. Yeah, I'm actually going to make it a double header episode to compare. Actually, no, I'll do something different. It's going to be The Thing, but it's going to be the two versions of The Thing. It's going to be the 1950s The Thing from Another World, and it's going to be the 80s The Thing. I am also going to do a The Blob episode that will be part of the first initial drop of episodes. So go ahead and listen to that now if you want. That should be out alongside this. But next week is going to be a The Thing doubleheader. I won't be touching the 2011 one because that's an episode on its own. But I will be doing a The Thing doubleheader. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. Go ahead and check out my YouTube channel, Leo Legionnaire, as well as a bunch of other things that I may or may not be doing. Who knows? Go look at the things. But anyway, if you'd like to get in contact, please feel free to tweet at what's the ad? It's at Lost in Sci-Fi and Fantasy, I think. It's something like that. Again, the thing will be in the description, or feel free to email at Lost in Sci-Fi and Fantasy at gmail.com. They're long titles. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. I will see you guys later. Goodbye.